So here we go, another fantastic video, and I'm going to be talking about my ideas for a Double Dragon game, a 3D Double Dragon game, so a modern Double Dragon game. And but before I get further into the video, I'm going to go over a little bit of my history with Double Dragon, so people will understand I'm not just just some guy. So let's get to it after the cut. So, I guess we can get started. So, basically, I began playing Double Dragon when I was a wee little boy, a wee little kid, and I began playing Double Dragon back in the day on the, actually the first Double Dragon game I played was Battletoads Double Dragon on the NES at my cousin's house. And then later on, when I got my SNES, I played Super Double Dragon, which is still like one of my favorite Double Dragon games. I then later went back and played the Double Dragon games on the SNES. To be fair, the best one is the first one on the SNES. It's not a great arcade conversion, but for what the limitations of the hardware, it's pretty damn good. And then I played, a Super Double Dragon, aka Double Dragon. At the time, it was Double Dragon 4, even though it's not really. So Super Double Dragon, which, like I said, is my favorite one. It has great music and a lot of remixes of classic Double Dragon tunes. And then I played Double Dragon 5, which was the fighting game, which was based on the cartoon. Which was, it was a Saturday morning cartoon, but if you like Double Dragon, you dealt with it. It expanded the universe and in some interesting ways. And then, Double Dragon kind of went dormant for a little bit until we got Double Dragon Advance, which is a really good game. It basically takes the best qualities of all the other Double Dragon games and puts them together. And then it kind of went away for a while until we got the Double Dragon remix, like reboot from, I forget who made it, but it was like this Double Dragon Neon, which kind of sucked. It didn't feel like a Double Dragon game. And then later, the property was bought by, I want to say, Arc System Works, and they made Double Dragon Returns, or no, Double Dragon 4, which, it's a little too much like the NES game, because we graduated from the NES game, so why do you keep on going back to that? And then we got Double Dragon's been dormant. I think that Double Dragon could be a really awesome franchise for the future. So this is just my idea for a Double Dragon game in a 3D environment, like a action adventure type thing going on. So without much ado, let's get to it. So that was just my brief history. So here's my idea for a Double Dragon 3D game. So you might ask yourself, what does this mean? Why am I talking about a 3D Double Dragon game? Well, because I really think the formula could work in a 3D space. And the way I think it could work is by emulating a game that basically is taking the 3D beat-em-up formula and evolving it for a more modern age. The 2D beat-em-up into a 3D beat-em-up. And it's more of a tactical beat-em-up anyway, so this would be perfect for Double Dragon. And what I'm talking about is the Yakuza formula. Yeah, so basically, Yakuza has really taken this concept and turned it into something that's worth using. It basically, it's not like, basically, in my opinion, beat-em-ups are broken into two distinct categories. You have the arcade-style beat-em-ups, and you have the more slower-paced console beat-em-ups. That basically, they couldn't be direct ports, so they had to add different categories to make them more, how can I put this, more palatable. So basically, I could see in the future, perhaps, a beat 'em up that's a little bit more a Double Dragon beat 'em up that's played more like a straight up um, action adventure game. So basically, as you go through the game, your character goes through a small city, beating up people, having kind of a deeper story than you would normally have in a beat 'em up. And when I think of a story, I think of something that's more of a how can I put this? Taking cues from the animated show, where you have the two brothers against each other, and then teaming up to take on the Shadow Master, all that type of cool shit. I think that could work really well as a story for the game. But anyway, here are my ideas. So basically, my idea is a Double Dragon game where you essentially have, it starts off with kind of a tutorial level that tells you about how the two brothers get separated, maybe some type of attack on a temple, standard martial arts stuff, two babies separated, mother and father take the kids, separate them. The father gets Billy, the mother gets Jimmy. The mother is cut down by the Shadow Master. Her soul is absorbed. So the father manages to get Billy out, but he goes back to the other kid and makes sure his wife is fine. And boom, he thinks, oh yeah, my wife is perfectly fine. Everything's okay. He gets cut down. He gets viciously wounded from behind. Turns out the Shadow Master has absorbed his wife's soul and taken his kid. And he fights the best he can, but you get hit from behind like that. There's nothing much you can really do at that point. And that's your opening. The two parents are taken out by the Shadow Master. One of the kids has been kidnapped, and the Shadow Master, there's this prophecy that the Double Dragon will defeat the Shadow, but the Shadow Master's like, well, I can get from out of this particular prophecy because I can get the Double Dragon to take on itself. And that's where the game that's where you have the first part of this game is basically just, Jimmy Lee being brainwashed and turned against, being taught a perverted form of the Double Dragon martial arts style, Shadow Dragon. And he's basically being pretty much built into being programmed to basically take out his brother, and that's the game. I mean, you have this small, maybe like a kind of a small section where you do like little side quests and stuff, standard beat 'em up stuff. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's all just going to be kind of like, your standard beat 'em up experience, but in the vein of like a Yakuza. So you're gonna have like little side missions and side quests and shit like that to keep you honest, give you stuff to do. So yeah. So I guess I can go more in depth with what the first game would entail. Yes, this is a two-parter, and I'm thinking you can stretch this into 2 games. So let's get into the general premise more in depth after the cut. So my idea for a setting would be a game where essentially your main character is, you start the game playing as Billy Lee, the character in blue with the dark hair. In some games he's got black hair, in other games he's got blue hair. I don't care what color hair, I just want a character. You're going to start as Billy, and then you can play as Jimmy. And each character has their own distinct, thing. You don't get to Jimmy until you face him and defeat him or lose to him. This is important. The city, I'm thinking maybe kind of like some type of fictionalized amalgamation of fictionalized version of LA, like a future kind of shitty, scummy LA, or you could go with a kind of asshole-ish, kind of like a fictionalized, scummy version of Seattle, something like that. Those are my ideas. That's what I'm basically going with for the setting. As far as the premise goes, I'm thinking the gameplay premise. I'm thinking the first game would basically be you finding your long lost brother. You guys fighting, working out. Your brother working out. He's been set up by the Shadow Master, and him coming to the realization, shit, this guy tried to kill me. And we're gonna have to team up, like, because your brother's like, I don't trust you initially. Kind of like, I'm thinking kind of like this thing, kind of like Double Impact, that Jean-Claude Van Damme movie where he plays both himself and his brother. You remember that movie? Something like that, right? So basically, the game would essentially kind of become this, the Double Dragon, the two brothers, and I envision that this game is going to culminate with you basically taking on the number 2 guy, the guy who's actually in control of the city, more so than your brother is. Or even, maybe taking on the Shadow Master himself. And essentially you coming to the realization that, shit, this guy, whatever. Something like that. I don't know. Could be a second guy, could be the Shadow Master, I don't know. Something of that nature. Maybe if you do fight the Shadow Master, you can't actually defeat him because he's threatening to hold your parents' souls hostage or some shit like that. Which is, the Shadow Master is kind of an asshole, so that seems like that would be something he would do. And maybe it culminating with him getting away, but you badly beat him, so now he's vowing revenge. Typical villain shit. So I guess that'll be the end of part 1. We'll get to part 2 after this, but before we do, I guess I'll get into what's coming up next this weekend and upcoming events. So if you haven't heard, as you know, if you're a loyal viewer of this channel, we have the BS Busters this Sunday and the Sci-Fi Power Hour-ish this Saturday. We will be talking about Henry Cavill leaving his Superman role, Star Trek getting the Governor's Award, and all that type of fun jazz. We also have a Questionathon this Saturday, so leave your questions for Sunday's Questionathon after the cut, and peace!